Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of World Panorama. Here we are getting you your weekly dose of major international news with a perspective. I'm Sana Khan. Before we get you detailed reports, here's a look at the top stories this week. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez's death leaves leadership void in Latin America. Maduro sworn in as interim president. Kenya's election counting progresses into the final stage. Uhuru Kenyatta wins Kenya's presidency with 50.03% of total votes. And China's defense budget rises by 10.7%, defends hefty defense budget as key to Asian stability. This week, the focus is on one of the biggest world events, perhaps ever since 2013, has begun the death of a socialist, one of the most charismatic leaders the 21st century has seen, big world leader, Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. When Russia and Eastern Europe abandoned socialism and China radically changed the meaning of socialism, it was Hugo Chavez who brought back respect and credibility to the word socialism. From Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad to Oscar winner Sean Penn, an eclectic mix of mourners bid farewell to Venezuela's Chavez at a state funeral, and the charismatic but divisive leader's deputy called for a snap election to pick his successor. Now, Chavez died this week at the age of 58 after a 2-year battle with cancer, devastating millions of mostly poor supporters who hailed him for ploughing Venezuela's vast oil wealth into social projects, but giving hope to foes who decried him as a dictator. Chavez not only proved that Western capitalism can be challenged in its own backyard, but also showed the difference from the oil-rich empires of the Middle East. Whereas Chavez used the oil money for uplifting the poor, the oil money in the Middle East has brought the most decadent pro-Western and slavish governments in power. Chavez proved that national wealth can be used for the upliftment of the downtrodden instead of supporting the most decadent lifestyles of the elite. Chavez went against prevailing trend of globalization, which has widened the gap between the rich and the poor and helped to concentrate wealth in the pro-Western elite. So how will Hugo Chavez's death change things within Venezuela, in Latin America, and how will it impact relationships with the West and China, the world at large? We will be talking about some of these points with our guest this week. I welcome former Foreign Secretary Shashank. Thank you, sir, so much for joining me on World Panorama. But before that, here's a detailed report.
Venezuela is in mourning. Venezuelans took to the streets after it was announced that President Hugo Chavez had died. Hundreds of emotional loyalists gathered at Bolivar Plaza, glued to government television that replayed images from the late president's life. Chavez's death was announced by Venezuelan Vice President Nicolas Maduro in a televised address earlier on Tuesday afternoon, ending 14 years of tumultuous rule that made him a hero for the country's poor.
We are going to miss him until the last day of our lives, but we carry on his legacy here, and we will carry it on with strength. May our people know the democratic, revolutionary, anti-imperialist and socialist legacy of our commandant. He is carried on with firmness, with absolute loyalty.
Thousands of supporters gathered outside the military hospital in Caracas, where Chavez was being treated, and shouted slogans in support of their departed leader.
You are not dead. You live in my soul. You live in my soul, brother. Hopefully, this will serve your people to unite. We are going to continue moving forward because Commandant showed us a lot and he gave us a lot of strength. During the most difficult moments, he moved forward.
A former paratrooper, Hugo Chavez burst onto Venezuela's national stage in 1992 when he led a failed military coup. After 2 years in prison, he returned to politics and was swept to power in a 1998 election. A self-proclaimed socialist and revolutionary, he won enduring support among the poor and repeated election victories by using Venezuela's oil wealth to pursue socialist policies. But his opponents accused him of mishandling the economy and taking the country towards dictatorship. Internationally, he was a staunch critic of US imperialism and accused Washington of backing a failed coup against him in 2002. Leaders from around the world sent their condolences, while some allies like Ecuador called for national days of mourning in their own country.
In honor of the departure of the dear friend of Ecuador, of Latin America, the President of the Brother of Bolivian Republic of Venezuela, Ecuador will declare 3 days of national mourning. Wherever you are, beloved Hugo, our commitment today more than ever is not to take even one step backwards in fulfilling your dreams that are our shared dream.
Chavez has played a very important role in changing the course of history in the Latin American continent, particularly around the turn of the century till today. So along with Fidel Castro of Cuba, Chavez played a very important role in radicalizing the whole of Latin American politics.
Chavez's death opens the way for a new election in Venezuela that will test whether his socialist revolution can live on without his dominant personality at the helm. The vote should be held within 30 days and is likely to pit Chavez's preferred choice, Vice President Nicolas Maduro, against Enrique Capriles.
All right, let's talk more about this with our guest, Shashank. Sir, what do you feel? What were his strengths? Do you think that being politically inventive and distinctive, Chavez has left this strong legacy, and how easy or difficult will it be for Venezuela to, sustain this socialism that he's left behind?
Chavez came on the Venezuelan scene and the Latin American scene at a time when Eastern Europe had started moving towards joining. Some countries joined the European Union, others were trying to set up a new organization. So which means that socialism as an institution, as a structure of the government, had been discredited.
Right.
Though socialism as a philosophy perhaps was still in the minds of many writers and poets and all that kind of thing. In China's case, again, as your story shows, that yes, Chinese, again, they had moved away to some kind of a capitalism under communist control. What happened in Latin America, because they were supposed to be the bright stars of Washington Consensus, and they were supposed to be growing at a very rapid pace, so growth had taken substituted for the poor people getting into the mainstream. Right. So Chavez was able to do that.
Talking about his relationship with other countries, one of his most striking features was his very aggressive and very confrontational style of functioning, and he did not shy away from taking on, let's say, the United States of America head-on when it came to certain matters. Now, till now, the relationships with the US remain strained. He even called to congratulate Barack Obama when he took office, but then nothing really took off from there as well. So how does the dynamic between the US and Venezuela change, if it does at all?
Well, US perhaps took it that Chavez was a 9-day wonder. And once he goes away, once again the Venezuelan scene would shift, because the oil wealth generally does corrupt the technical people, the rich people. And so there was a feeling that, yes, they will again go back to the old ways where the minority of rich people would control the country. And would, the trickle-down philosophy would somehow or the other function. So some goodies would be given to the poor people. But I think it has not happened, because suddenly we find that a similar kind of an ideology has arisen in other Latin American countries also. I remember the case of Brazil, that when the change took over to Lula, Inácio de Silva, the Brazilian government tries to make friendships across the world in order to take care of the poor people, in order to build a hunger-free society. So they contacted us and they said, look, in India you have the agricultural development program, you have a large population. So in any case, any government has to take care of the poor people. So they said, we would like to learn from you and work together with you. And this will not only be only for Brazil, but for all of Latin America, for all the South American countries. And so Venezuela and Brazil therefore built up a strong partnership, which is still continuing. Though some people say that maybe the Brazilians' model is a more moderate model. Chavez, I think, took to a situation where there were domestic protests against him.
Right.
And in fact, there was a coup also against him for a short while, which later on was overturned. So what happens is that Chavez took it personally. And he felt that either his own rich people or the Americans and many others, they were trying to overthrow his government.
Right.
And so he did not mince words in criticizing Obama, calling him a clown, or similarly other people also. He just he wanted to get the world attention, and he felt that only by using these kind of provocative words, he would get the attention of the world.
Now, Venezuela's nationalized oil sector, that also needs to open up to foreign investors, which hasn't happened, considering the fact that, you know, the cash inflows account for 90% from oil. So that is really important. How do you think the coming in of the new leader now? The elections are going to be held very soon. How is that going to change? Will things change?
No, Chavez had nationalized the oil assets quite a bit, but still some American companies continue to work there, and most of the oil flows towards America. So Chavez did not cut off the relationship which Americans were fearing.
Okay.
So he was very practical in that context. He knew that it would destabilize his government if he were to discontinue supplies of oil against the contractual obligations which he had undertaken. So I presume that even his successors would follow a kind of pragmatic policy, socialism of the Chavez model, but at the same time not upsetting the apple cart, just letting it continue. Whatever supplies are going to the other country, they will continue. At the same time, they will start bringing in countries like China, India, many others, Brazil, as partners in their oil assets. And I remember that even they have been encouraging Indian companies to participate in the pharmaceutical sector, in the oil sector, also in the education sector. I'm sure that the same thing they must be doing with other countries, because Chavez felt that traditionally Venezuela considered only the West as its reliable partner. Chavez wanted to set up new partnerships, and he felt that there was an option available which people must know, that there are other people across the world who have similar feelings and who have sympathy for the poor of Venezuela.
All said and done, the man did make history, and he will be remembered worldwide with great leaders like Che Guevara and also Fidel Castro, among many, many other great leaders that we have seen. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me on World Panorama and sharing your views with me. Time for a very short break. After that, a report on what lies beyond China's latest hike in military spending. Don't go anywhere. You're watching World Panorama. Uhuru Kenyatta, Kenya's Deputy Prime Minister, has won Kenya's presidential election with a slim margin of 50.03% of votes cast. This according to provisional figures announced by the Election Commission. Kenyatta, 51, who faces international charges of crimes against humanity, secured 61,73,433 votes, and the Commission announced on Saturday indicating that he had secured the more than 50% of votes needed for a first-round win.
Raila Odinga, 1,222. Uhuru Kenyatta, 22,716. Total votes cast were 26,302. Rejected votes were 197.
The son of Kenya's founding president Uhuru Kenyatta won the country's presidential election with a slim margin of 50.03% of votes cast. Figures announced and displayed by the Election Commission showed in the early hours of Saturday. Kenyatta, who faces international charges of crimes against humanity, secured the victory over his main rival Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who secured 43.3% of the vote, the figures showed. The first round win, which must still be officially confirmed by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, means Kenyans who waited 4 days for the result of the vote will not now face a runoff that would have prolonged the uncertainty. Yet, Kenyatta's slim margin of victory could also fuel legal challenges from his rival Odinga, who also lost in the 2007 race and whose party has complained about the election process before, during and after Monday's vote. Kenyans hope this election, which has till now passed off broadly peacefully, would restore their reputation as one of Africa's most stable democracies after the tribal slaughter that followed the disputed 2007 vote. The test will be whether any challenges to the outcome are worked out in the courts of the newly reformed judiciary or on the streets of Kenya.
Now, China, as per its official figures, will be spending nearly thrice as much as India on defense, highlighting the fact that Chinese Dragon is now focused on increasing its comprehensive national power despite global recessionary trends. This is in contrast with India, which announced a marginal defense budget hike for 2013-14 while slashing the quantum of its defense budget hike. India has also slashed its capital expenditure. That's the money used for weaponry and equipment for the military modernization by 10,000 crore rupees in the current fiscal year. In fact, here's a more detailed report on China's defense budget hike. In the inaugural annual session of the National People's Congress, the new Chinese regime announced a hike in its defense budget by 10.7% to $115.7 billion.
We should accelerate the modernization of national defense and the armed forces so as to strengthen China's defense and military capabilities. We should resolutely uphold China's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity and ensure its peaceful development.
China's new defense budget may have raised hackles in India, but Chinese state media say it is small compared to $700 billion budget of US, pointing out that the proportion of the hike has been decreased for a second consecutive year. China had decreased its defense budget in 2011 by 12.7% and 11.2% in 2012. The biggest increase of 17.6% came in 2008. Beijing's public budget is widely thought by foreign experts to undercount its real spending on military modernization, which has unnerved Asian neighbors and drawn repeated calls from Washington for China to share more about its intentions. While China ranks first in defense spending among Asian countries and second worldwide, its defense budget is still only 1/5 of the amount spent by the US, whose defense budget is by far the largest of any country.
It's a reaction to the United States rebalancing strategy. It's aiming at the recent dispute over islands in the East and the South China Sea. And also China needs to boost its force projection capability. So all of these, including other expenses like increase the benefit of the military personnel.
China has repeatedly said the world has nothing to fear from its military spending, which is needed for legitimate defensive purposes, and that money spent on People's Liberation Army pales in comparison with the Pentagon's outlays. Asian neighbors, however, have been nervous about Beijing's expanding military, and its latest double-digit rise could reinforce disquiet in Japan, India, Southeast Asia and self-ruled Taiwan, which China considers part of its territory.
In a sense, we wanted to understand that it's a legitimate increase for its expanding military role. However, for other countries in the region, it's quite alarming that China's continued defense budget increase and military capability will definitely be a threat to regional countries.
Japan and China have locked horns over islands each claimed in the East China Sea. Vietnam, the Philippines and other nations have challenged Beijing over claims to swathes of the South China Sea that could be rich in oil and gas. Over the past 6 months, China's standoff with Japan over a series of uninhabited rocky islands in the East China Sea, known as the Senkaku in Japan and the Diaoyu in China, has become more acrimonious. And the UN Security Council on Thursday approved a new regimen of sanctions against North Korea for conducting an underground nuclear test last month, imposing penalties on North Korean banking, travel and trade in a unanimous vote that reflected the country's increased international isolation.
South Korea's foreign ministry welcomed new UN sanctions against North Korea, as the defense ministry warned South Korea would immediately turn a joint training drill with the United States to punishment mode if the North provokes.
Our government welcomes and supports the resolution of sanctions against North Korea on March 8, unanimously adopted by the United Nations Security Council.
The United Nations imposed new sanctions on North Korea on Thursday, aimed at curtailing its nuclear and ballistic missiles program, and China, the isolated regime's only major ally, said it wanted the measures fully implemented.
Our government highly appreciates the resolution, which strongly condemns North Korea's nuclear test, urges the North to immediately abandon its nuclear programs and strengthens and expands the range of sanctions against North Korea.
The new United Nations Security Council measures announced on Thursday
tighten financial restrictions on North Korea and called for more to be done to stop Pyongyang shipping and receiving banned cargo. North Korea conducted a third nuclear test on February 12 in defiance of UN resolutions and declared it had achieved progress in securing a functioning atomic arsenal. It is widely believed the North does not have the capacity to launch a nuclear strike at the United States mainland.
Another short breather. After that, all the updates from the world of showbiz. Stick around. Thanks for staying with us. Time now to take a look at some of the other international news in a quick wrap. Here's Globe Watch.
A Chinese envoy said on Wednesday that China is not in favor of putting excessive pressure or imposing new sanctions on Iran over Tehran's controversial nuclear program. Wang Min, China's deputy permanent representative to the UN, made the statement at a Security Council meeting on the latest work of 1737 committee, which is tasked with monitoring a set of sanctions against Iran established by Resolution 1737 and subsequent Council resolutions. Arab League ministers debated on Wednesday whether to award Syria's vacant seat in the regional bloc to the opposition Syrian National Coalition. Ministers meeting in Cairo were divided on whether to let the opponents of President Bashar al-Assad take over Syria's seat previously held by Damascus government. Damascus was suspended from Cairo-based League in November 2011, 8 months into what began as a peaceful popular uprising against Assad but has turned into a civil war. Police clashed with hundreds of protesters of Bangladesh Nationalist Party and also launched tear gas and rubber bullets during an anti-government demonstration in Dhaka on March 6. According to media reports, several people sustained injuries in clashes when the protesters collided with the police personnel who retaliated after the demonstrators hurled bombs at the law enforcers. A service was held in St. Peter's Basilica on March 6 when cardinals who were in Rome to attend the general congregation's prayer for the church. The celebration began with the recitation of glorious mysteries of Rosary in Italian and Latin. Following the Rosary, there was an exposition of Blessed Sacrament and a brief time for adoration. Under church law, they have until March 20 to start a conclave to choose a new pope from among 115 of them who are under age of 80, but they can decide to start it earlier. The US Capitol shut down on Wednesday ahead of a predicted snowstorm that already had blanketed the Midwest, leaving thousands without power and forcing hundreds of flights to be cancelled. By mid-morning, however, the predicted heavy snowfall failed to materialize and the 6 inches to 12 inches expected seemed less than likely.
Shifting gears, let's now get you all the sports updates that you missed from through the week. Have a look at sports action.
World number 1 Rory McIlroy acknowledged he was wrong to walk off mid-round at last week's Honda Classic and said his toothache was not bad enough to justify quitting the tournament. Facing the media for the first time since his controversial withdrawal at PGA National, McIlroy said it soon dawned on him that he had made the wrong decision. McIlroy has played just 4 full professional rounds in 3 months, missing the cut in the Abu Dhabi Championship in January and suffering a surprise first-round exit in the WGC Accenture World Match Play Championship last month in Arizona. Argentine striker Ezequiel Lavezzi salvaged a 1-1 home draw for Paris Saint-Germain, who overcame Valencia 3-2 on aggregate to reach the quarter-finals of the Champions League for the first time in 18 years on Wednesday. After a first half short on entertainment, Valencia made the tie interesting when Brazilian Jonas put the Spaniards ahead with a superb 25-meter strike on 55 minutes. Qatar backed PSG without suspended top scorer Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who was sent off late in the first leg, equalized 11 minutes later when Lavezzi scored at the second attempt after his initial shot was parried back to him by keeper Vicente Guaita. French show jumper Patrice Delaveau won the first Longines Hong Kong Masters, taking podium places in 4 out of 6 competitions in the 3-day event. Delaveau, ranked 47th in the world, took silver in 1 competition and gold in 3 others, including Saturday's Longines Grand Prix, which earned him prize money of nearly $700,000. The 48-year-old rider on Lacrimoso at the 3rd HTC beat dozens of higher-ranked show jumpers, such as world number 1 Christian Allmann from Germany and number 4 Edwina Tops Alexander from Australia.
And time now for all the very latest news from the world of movies and lifestyle. Here's our entertainment wrap.
Halle Berry shined on the red carpet on March 5th in Hollywood as the Oscar-winning actress arrived for the premiere of her new thriller, The Call. In the film directed by Brad Anderson, Buddy takes on the role of Jordan, a veteran 911 operator who receives a life-altering call from a teenage girl who has just been abducted. She realizes that she must confront a killer from her past in order to save the girl's life. The film also stars Morris Chestnut, Michael Eklund and David Otunga. The call opens across the US on March 15. If there were any doubts about lingering force of rock guitarist Jimi Hendrix, just look at his new single, Somewhere. Almost 43 years after his death, Somewhere went to #1 on the Billboard Hot Single sales in February. People, Hell and Angels, released on March 5th, is billed as a collection of 12 previously unreleased studio performances by Hendrix. The album arrives with the simultaneous release of newly struck mono-vinyl editions of early Hendrix classics Are You Experienced and Axis, Bold as Love. Lebanese designer Elie Saab staged his catwalk show on the final day of Paris Fashion Week, presenting an autumn-winter 2013-14 collection that was extremely feminine and ladylike despite having been inspired by masculine elements. Unlike Saab's typical past collections that are instantly recognized by their pastel, candy-color palettes and extravagantly embellished and sequined pieces, this collection was much more streamlined, modern and toned down. There were a number of easy-day looks such as crepe satin jumpsuit, high-waisted trousers and sheer silk chiffon blouses.
That's all we have for you in this edition of World Panorama. I'll be back next week, same time, with more world news. Till then, you can join us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. This week, we wrap up with some breathtaking visuals for a cause. Here are some words calling for an end to sexual violence against women in conflict projected onto Rome's landmark Colosseum to mark International Women's Day. Goodbye and thanks for watching.